With a single mighty swing of his butcher's knife, Aaron brought down the strange creature consisting of moss and mud before it could hurt his siblings anymore. The creature began to crumble immediately, dropping through the waste grate into the strange green fluid at the bottom of the shaft. Oh, welcome adventurer! I was just in the middle of retelling the story of the first session of my short adventure series, A Quest for Friends. A tale of 4 orphans which had to go on an adventure to save their caretaker, a friendly elderly half-orc they call Gramps. They had to leave the farm for the first time since he took them in to venture into the dark, scary forest, fighting fake creatures and escaping the clutches of an evil witch while solving the riddles of a magic tower. If this sounds like a story you might enjoy or even want to run with your own group of friends, this video is for you. So let's open the chest and see what we got today. In my last videos, I talked about some handy tricks for creating and running one-shots. Today I want to give you an example of a quasi one-shot I have created and run recently as part of an episodic mini-adventure series. But for the purpose of this video, we can just assume it is a regular one-shot. It is not important that you have seen the videos, though if you haven't and like what you see here, consider checking them out. I link them in the top corner of the video. I will tell you how the one-shot is structured, and then I will summarize the events that played out at the virtual table. I will sprinkle in some advice and things that I haven't expected the players to come up with and how to deal with that. So this whole short adventure of mine will be called A Quest for Friends, so let's keep that as our work title for the one-shot. I will talk you through my process and my thoughts behind some of the decisions. If you have other great ideas, change things up as you like if you want to run it yourself. A disclaimer for any players watching that might want to play this one-shot with me or their own dungeon masters. I would advise you not to watch this to avoid spoilers, but to any players out there, feel free to share this with your dungeon master or consider to run this one-shot yourself. Your DM surely would be happy to get the chance to play sometimes too. If you don't want to miss out on any future videos, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to join in on this journey. So, now that the players are gone, let's start preparing for a little one-shot adventure. My main inspiration for creating this short adventure that will consist of a handful of episodic sessions is the game Anna's Quest by Daedalic Entertainment. Using games, movies or books as inspiration for your sessions is a great way to get the basis for your preparation, especially if you use something less known. Your players won't know that you're actually taking the plot or different elements or characters from something else, so you can use them for inspiration and change them in any way you like to make it your own. A lot of gameplay is not really usable in terms of D&D because it is a click and point adventure, so a lot of find item X and use it on Y, with no combat whatsoever, but the general story and environment is optimal to use as inspiration, and you will see a ton of puzzles and exploration. The game opens with a narrative intro, where the premise of the game is introduced, and then we start in a locked room inside the witch's tower. Starting with the pre-written small intro text can help to get the players in the right mindset and introduce them to the world. Give them their main motivation from the get-go, so they know immediately what their goal is. I changed some names from the setting and made it more D&D friendly. Instead of one granddaughter, we have now a group of orphans, so we have a starting point for all the players. Instead of starting already captured inside the witch's tower like in the game, I began with their journey through the dark forest. I wanted to show them why Gramps always told them to stay away from the forest. I think it's a cool way to introduce the players to the light-hearted world of Attribution. I wanted to make clear from the beginning that this is a low-stakes fairy tale environment with a focus on fun. Our first encounter will consist of a combat where they have to fight some evil sprites, which are here to catch the PCs for the witch. So it doesn't really matter if they lose this fight, they will just wake up in a locked room and the adventure continues. I want to make this battle hard, with a chance that the sprites succeed, but also I want them to have fun, so I decided to create a multiple wave encounter, ramping up the difficulty over time. At first, just 2 sprites tried to sneak up on them while they are standing at the crossroad with a broken signpost trying to figure out where to go next. The players might believe we have started the one-shot with exploration, but this is to make the ambush actually even more surprising. Give players with a good passive perception a description of how they feel like they are being watched and that they hear strange noises from their surroundings, allowing them to investigate and have a chance to spot the ambush. The second wave consists of 4 sprites, 2 archers and 2 of them using long swords and melee range. The final wave consists out of all the sprites from before reappearing with their champion that does 2 instead of 1 damage and wears a fancy animal skull. I tend to not over-prepare such battle encounters and adjust the difficulty on the spot, throwing in more enemies or single stronger ones if needed, or adjusting their battle tactics or hit points if the encounter is too difficult. Besides that, it is okay to quote-unquote lose this fight, but still make it fun and clearly tell them that as soon as they drop below 0, they are surrounded by fairy dust and that they are immediately stabilized. If the players know that this is not a life or death situation, they know that this will not mean that they lose the one-shot. If they successfully fight off the sprites or are about to do so, let a dark cloud appear from out of the forest. The witch walks out of it, scolding the sprites that she has to do everything herself, casting a spell onto the children. "Come, little children, come now, I say, sleep fast now, sleep now, I take you away." Everything gets dark and we can transition to the next scene. Make sure to describe how overwhelmingly strong the magic of this witch is. The players need to get the feeling that this is an enemy they are not prepared for. Make sure that she mentions later how much of an inconvenience it was for her, and maybe even use that in a later confrontation, when she could have used that spell but already had to waste it on them earlier. This creates the feeling that their success in the combat encounter earlier actually meant something. So, this is our Act 1. We have an hour to set everything up and let them get into character. Give them some time for roleplay before they get ambushed by the Fae. It is great to interrupt the conversation they are having so it feels more like an ambush, instead of the enemies waiting politely so the PCs can finish their conversation. You can control the pacing by adjusting the number of waves and number of sprites, and also by taking your time with the witch and giving them a roleplay opportunity if needed. The second act gives you plenty of opportunities to adjust the pacing if you haven't succeeded to stay in time with this act. So, how did the events play out for my players? Meet the group. I gave my 4 players 6 characters to choose from. First, we have Aaron. He's the eldest of the children, a tiefling with a passion for cooking, using a large butcher's knife as a weapon. Next, we have Ubra. She's the actual granddaughter of Grams and a cleric of the Red Dragon, protector of the kingdom. Her holy symbol is a torch, which spans her light. She's really afraid of the dark, you must know. Third is the Dragonborn Drilkus. He's the bard of the group and likes to play harmless pranks to cheer up his siblings. He has an old lute with rusty strings, which Grams gave him. And last but not least, we have the halfling Zara. She's an airhead and daydreamer. Her dreams are so vivid that they have turned into reality. She's a wild mage sorcerer that loves sweets and baking so much she uses a big sugar cane as a spell focus. They arrive at the crossroad and find the broken signpost. While most of them try to figure out where the sign once pointed and which is the right path for them, Zara's mind wanders off and she hears giggling in a nearby bush. Against the advice from Grams, she leaves the path to investigate. She gets jumped by 2 sprites and so the fight begins. Every time they defeat a sprite, it explodes into fairy dust and they reappear with the next wave of reinforcements. Zara and Ubra went unconscious during the fight, but Aaron could defeat their leader, causing the rest to flee. It was here where I encountered the first problem. Initially, I wanted to introduce the witch in the disguise of a nice old lady, but my players were not so easily fooled and the conversation with her was a bit dragged out and awkward. Just let her have her grand entrance and use magic to transition the children into the next scene. We need the children to get captured, so don't be afraid to use the witch as a trump card if they beat the sprites. Now the PCs are trapped inside a locked room. The room looks like a normal children's room to them, with beds, a table, along with some food. But they will probably immediately notice the strange-looking chair with a helmet-like construction above it, and the console with plenty of wires and buttons. Before they have a lot of time to explore the room though, they hear the voice of the witch through a loudspeaker mounted in the wall besides the door, and notice a camera following their every move. The witch forces one of them to sit in the chair. As soon as one of them does this, the helmet starts moving down, emitting a blue light. This machine is supposed to enhance or awaken some of the powers that are passed on to them by living so close to their grams for all these years. At least, that is her theory. The machine gave Anna the power of telekinesis, but I bet we can up with something even better, so let's make some community work out of it. What would be a cool ability X that could help the players in this one-shot? Write your ideas down in the comments. For now, let's run with the telekinesis. Imagine some form of invisible mage hand that is able to do a bit of plot ex machina stuff, as long as the players are creative with it. Now, the witch conducts some remote tests of these new abilities, from the safety of her own house, of course. If the players look out of the right side window, they can see her house on a small hill several hundred meters away. The test should show the players the new ability at their tool belt. But the witch is still disappointed because the effect is not as strong as she anticipated it to be, and she will leave the kids to themselves for now, but still keeping an eye on them through the camera. After the scene, the next real encounter starts, with the puzzle of how to get out of here. I will provide some ideas, but the best thing is to see what the players come up with what they got. As long as the idea sounds plausible with the information they were presented with, there should be a possibility that their plans might work. So, let's take a room tour. First, we have a camera that needs to be disabled. Possible ways could be to smudge some of the thick portrait onto the lens, but they might as well use some of their class abilities. But the catch is that one of them has to keep the witch busy, or else she just will use magic to keep them from what they're about to do. The next step is to open the door. They could try to use the machine again, to increase the power of the telekinesis, or to give it to another or even all of the PCs. If they try to just use it again by mashing buttons, the helmet will explode, ejecting a blue bow-like crystal. The crystal gives them an electric shock if they try to touch it with bare hands, causing 1 point of damage. To pick it up, they have to insulate it somehow. If they look around, they can find a plastic ball that has conveniently the perfect shape. They could use the scissors to cut it in half and isolate the ball. If the player with the telekinesis is trying to use it to let the crystal hover, let them make a wisdom check DC 10 to see if they can concentrate enough to do it. I would suggest to shift the stat to one of the main stats of the character, to make it easier. Together, or with a stronger version, they could try to break the door. This will only result in the speaker exploding. They could also try to destroy the speaker with force. Where the speaker once was, there is now a small hole in the wall. They can see a lever on the other side, but if they have used telekinesis for this, it is now on cooldown and they have to use something else to reach and pull the lever. If they have already taken a lot of time to get here, maybe the hole is big enough to climb through directly. Hiding besides the other stuffed animals is Ben, a seemingly sentient teddy bear. He played dead because he was afraid of the witch. He has lost most of his memories and only remembers helpful hints with convenient timing. Ben is here to help the players out. He is a tool you can use to help them if they are taking too long for something. He later tells the players about the hidden attic door in the ceiling. If the players explicitly search the ceiling before, they might find it, but they don't need to go there yet. But you should definitely be prepared that they could go there. You never know what ideas they come up with. Let's take a look at my players and how they managed to escape the room. Upra volunteered to sit on the chair. Great choice, because out of the 4 she's actually related to Grams and has the highest chance she got some of his abilities. After the scene played out as expected, they are now on their own to figure out a way out of here. The first attempts to tinker with the machine were foiled by the witch. I described to them how the camera followed them around and the voice of the witch, "No, no, let it go," and how they felt forced to stop what they were trying to do. They eventually split up, and while 3 of them did a lot of noise and movement to get her attention, Drilkas took a pillow cover and jumped from the desk up and covered the camera with it. Now, without being able to see, the witch was not able to cast her spells at them anymore. She threatened the children some more, but now they could explore the room unhindered. They got the machine to explode pretty fast, and Upra nearly knocked herself out trying to pick up the crystal with her bare hands, over and over again. Eventually, they used her telekinesis to put the crystal in a big leather pouch from the table. They put it back in the machine and strengthened Upra's powers even more. After that, they took a lot of time looking around the room and discussing possible ideas. They focused a lot on the windows, which are barred with strong metal rods, so there is no way they can get through the windows. So I introduced Ben to them to give them some hints. They had the idea to squeeze him through the bars and let him run around to open the door from the other side. They talked a lot about it, but immediately stopped pursuing it after Ben mentioned that he was a bit unsure. It would have worked, but Ben is not a brave teddy, so it would have required some encouragement from them. Eventually, Ubra tried her powers on the door, and the speaker exploded. The hole was large enough for them to climb through, and they escaped the room. It was here where I encountered my biggest mistake. I wanted to tell them that they see the witch coming over from her house, angrily waving her arms. I just wanted to describe them running down, barricading the door. But that just didn't work. They immediately wanted to check the chest and then try to set up an ambush to overwhelm the witch. They wanted to escape, and barricading the door seemed counterproductive from their point of view. One way to fix that would be to just describe the events like a cutscene, but that would feel like railroading, because it would be. So my solution was to retcon the events and tell them that the witch had threatened them to curse one of them in the morning after they have covered the camera, and she never actually came over. Instead, there is a magical force field at the door that hinders them from leaving. Ben still would be able to surpass this barrier because he's just a teddy bear. So this fixes that problem. Always keep in mind what assumptions you make while planning a one-shot. If the whole plot doesn't work if they do one thing different, try to change things up to account for player agency. I'm happy that this was just a playtest and no actual session. In that case, I would have just rolled with it and improvised to keep things going. With that problem out of the way and the players out of their room, we can start the next encounter, exploration. As soon as they try to leave the tower through the main door, they notice a magical barrier. The goal is to craft a protective charm to guard off the evil magic, but the players don't know that yet. But what they understand is that they need to find a way out of the tower. Let's take a look at what's inside the new area. Most notably, they will notice the skeleton chained to the wall in a cage. If they go near it, they notice that the door is locked. There is a key on the table by the painting of the witch, or they can use the thief tools one of them might have to unlock the door. If they are not interested out of curiosity, describe a small leather pouch tightly bound to the belt of the skeleton. The skeleton is hunted by its own ghost who will show himself when the player enter the cage or provoke it in any other way. He is bound to his remains by the witch's spell. His name is Mani, and he and his beloved wife Nami were captured by the witch. Nami was taken to the basement, hidden under the rock. If the players promise to bring him her ring, he will help them to escape. But he also tells them that they have to create a magic charm to escape the magic of this place. Under the rug is a metal door that can't be opened. If they ask Mani, there should be a button behind that painting. The button is inside a safe though, with a plug that reads "Borrel's Unbreakable Safe. Only Dragonfire could get through it." There is also a number lock. Now they think they are searching for a number. Or at least they assume that because brute force won't work apparently. Telekinesis would not work either here in that case. After they spend some time exploring the tower, Ben remembers something. He can tell them that there is a hatch in the ceiling above the small bed that leads to the attic. The witch went up there a lot when she was working on that machine. In the attic they can find 3 important things. A lute that has to be tuned but is masterfully worked and possibly magic, a hole in the roof through that they could reach a raven in its nest, and a baby red dragon running on a treadmill to supply the house with electricity. They can befriend the baby dragon by feeding him or other creative means. Now they have a new companion and a way to get inside the safe. So there's nothing in their way of getting inside the basement. They burn through the safe and open the door to find a stone staircase that leads them down. Down there they find her ritual chamber. Searching the room they should notice the following. A. There's a fancy looking spellbook on a desk. The instructions for the charm can be found in there. B. There's a drainage grid where a strange smell is coming from. Down there they find a skeletal hand with a ring holding a handkerchief with the name Nami written on it. There are also a bubbling cauldron and a large mirror in the room, but they will get important later. The players probably and hopefully want to get the ring. They can just use the telekinesis to get the handkerchief, but the hand with the ring won't budge. They have to become creative. Maybe they just open the grate and try to climb down there. But the fluid down there is green and doesn't look safe. It is probably acid. Depending on if the player actually falls in there, they could just make a con save, and if they fail, they are just poisoned for the rest of the exploration, with the area that touched the fluid becoming green and stinky. Turns out it's not acid, but something really gross. Now they have the ring and can head back to Mani. The twist? Mani will fly away as soon as he gets the ring. The ring breaks the seal that binds him to the skeleton, and he immediately starts searching for Nami. The number of things they have to collect for the protection charm to work depends on the time they have left. This is the last task before we go into Act 3, so I designed it with modular tasks. I will list some of the ingredients they could gather for the ritual. The first two on this list are mandatory. The whispered word from a ghost. I will explain how they get that later. A raven feather, they get it from the raven on the roof. Sweets, found on the table. You could make a chocolate that can be found in the gold sack on the table upstairs, like chocolate coins. A mouse, you could send them on a wild goose chase through the whole house and win some time if needed. An image of the witch. You could use the painting or a hand-drawn version if one of the players have the idea to draw something. A stain of hair from the witch, found under one of the pillows in the upper stair rooms. You can add or change things like you want and need for your own one-shot, but at some point they meet the ghost of Nami. She's effectively mute since the childhood trauma and only uses gestures to communicate. If they tell her what Mani did, she gets angry and storms off. Both can be found in the basement, arguing. He tries to justify himself that he has only broken his promise to the children to search for her. She looks angry and disappointed. Players can mediate between them. This scene will be more important in the short adventure, but for the one-shot they should make up and help the PCs to get the whispered word for the ritual. They whisper that they love each other, and the player with the highest passive perception can even make out Nami's faint voice before both fade away. Let's take a look at our 4 adventurers, shall we? This part went in general like planned, but there were some scenes that I want to share with you nonetheless. When they inspect the cage, they were totally oblivious to the idea of trying to open the door. Instead, they used a mix of telekinesis and one of the poles, on which the curtains were hanging in front of one window. But hey, they made it work with teamwork, so a total success in my book. Up in the attic, they wanted to look into every box and every crate, so I had to come up with what's inside on the spot. Mostly spare parts for the machine in the room below. But also a chest full of left side shoes. I decided that the witch had one wooden leg, and so obviously she has no need for the left shoe in the pair. Besides that, they found a big red ruby inside the pot after accidentally breaking it. And if you're curious, they befriended the dragon by feeding it cookies. You know what would make me as happy as a baby dragon with cookies? If you give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm just starting out, and so I'm really happy about everyone that joins me on this journey. The last thing they figured out, / I improvised, was the flammability of the strange green fluid in the basement. Ubra played around with telekinesis and bubbles of this green fluid close to a torch, so one led to another. It nearly paid off in the last combat encounter when Drilkas considered setting the fluid ablaze with his Odin, as the enemy was standing on top of the grate. As the PCs throw the last ingredient into the cauldron, it begins to bubble, and one player has to recite the protective charm incantation. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Suddenly they can hear the voice of the witch echoing through the chamber, her image appearing in the mirror. Double, double, trouble you, bubble in a witch's brew. A Moss Mephit alchemist jumps out of the cauldron. Roll for initiative, we have reached the 3rd and final act. The Moss Mephit is a homebrew Mephit variant created by my friend DM of the Forest for me over on Instagram. I link his channel down in the doobly-doo. You can check out the full stat block for the Moss Mephit there. Tell him that I said hi if you visit him. The role of this enemy is to be the final boss and manifestation of the ill will of the witch. She takes the first round casting the spell to summon the Mephit, and immediately starts casting again. It's just so the players have the chance to figure out that she's up to something and they might want to do something against it. After that she casts cantrips like Acid Splash on the players, or Blade Ward and True Strike on the Mephit. It is a manifestation of her will, so target self counts. The players can easily break the mirror with an action, hindering the witch from casting anything besides the first spell to summon the Mephit. The Mephit throws vials of potions at the players, from acid to healing potions. Depending on the difficulty and your taste, you could use the Wild Magic table for additional effects. This fight is supposed to be a bit chaotic, but fun. You can use illusion clones to confuse the PCs where the real enemy is, or leave the fight pretty standard, depending on the time you have left. In theory, we should have an hour left for the combat and the outro. After the fight, the players meet the witch upstairs that immediately tries to cast a spell on them. A good point to ramble about that she has already used her powerful sleep spell and have to do it the hard way now, if she had to do it in the beginning. But the charm wards off the spell, and with the power of telekinesis or just their friendship, depending on how you like to roll, they can throw the evil magic right back at her and defeat her. They find a vial of the cure for Grams on her and can return back home. The day is saved and the evil witch defeated. Did our 4 friends succeed to defeat the evil witch? Of course they were. Sarah went down after the Mephit landed a nasty critical hit and she grew a third eye, but they got her out of there and healed her up. With combined strength, they defeated this enemy. In the end, they easily threw back the spell to the witch, and they continued their journey to the nearby town of Amberg, for their story has only just begun. But this is a story for another time. Our one-shot ends here. With this, we have reached the end of today's video. I hope you liked this video and consider running this one-shot yourself. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. You can make my day by giving this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more D&D and world building related content. If you want to support me to build up my channel, you can become a supporter on Patreon, or you can follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see cool maps with little plot hooks you could use in your own games. I put links down in the doobly-doo. Your Dungeon Master for this video was Koroc, and I hope you join me in the next one.